feedback thing. One moment.
Yeah, make sure you don't have another microphone on, y'all, or it'll do stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's okay. I think it's good. So thank you guys for coming. Having a weird feedback thing, sorry. But thank you for coming to New Beginnings. This is basically a panel discussion with all of the artists that are here today. And we'll just be going over and asking them about what their general summarization of who they are and what their artwork is. And we'll be opening it up for questions, around the end. So if you actually have questions right now, you could type them into the chat and we can get back to them at the end of the discussion. My name is Davon Brantley. I'm also a fine artist as well too. I have exhibited around Cleveland and outside of Cleveland as well. And I mainly work in portraits and painting and drawing. So there's a lot of mixed media within my practice. And this is my first time curating a huge show of 10 people, which, was a lot for one person, which I am realizing that right after this entire experience. And it was also just very great to work with all of these wonderful women, and the purpose of the show was to give like a nice platform and voice to these women so that they would be able to talk about their artwork in the way that they want to. They'd be able to submit specific pieces that they wanted to exemplify their work as well. And it was just a great experience entirely. So without further ado, I'll actually just go down the list of artists and I'll just be asking them questions that kind of swarm into each other so that it can be a nice flow in the conversation. But just want to thank the gallery and everyone involved with this process, because it was a very great process for me, working with the exhibition committee, working with Amy, working with all of the artists. It was just very great communicating with you guys and setting up your stuff properly. And so I am actually going to first list the artists that are within this show. And I'm actually just going to go down the list in alphabetical order by last name and kind of ask you guys questions. You guys can take about like 5 or more minutes, to talk about your work, just so that we're not, going into a whole 3-hour Zoom chat or anything. But so who we have in the show is Stina Aleah. We have Ashley Bohanon. We also have ChristaFreehands. Amirah Cunningham is also within this chat as well too. Kacey Gill, Destyni Green, Celena Higginbottom, Younghyeon Ryu, and we have Euneata Walker as well, who are all in this show displaying their beautiful work. And what I like to start off with is asking Stina, who has exhibited in a bunch of galleries and also created a whole bunch of murals around Cleveland and outside of Cleveland. How do you feel about being a part of a show like this? And what does it have to do, with your practice? So give us like a summarization of like who you are and, being a part of this type of show. How does that feel for you?
Hey guys, I am Stina Aleah. I am an oil painter. Thank you, Davon, for putting this together. I was really proud to be a part of an all-women's exhibition that could speak to our backgrounds and just our experiences as people and as artists. And it really falls in line with what my work is about also, because a lot of my work goes into the messaging of what I deal with on a day-to-day, whether that is in the art industry or whether that's in my personal life, whether that's culturally or whether that's because I'm a woman. So a lot of my work kind of pulls in all of those themes. And so I thought it was really important to be able to be a part of a show that was the foundation. Right. I would say that was pretty much the foundation of the show. And I felt like it fell in line with everything that I I want to be associated with, and I want my work to be associated with.
Nice. I just had to unmute myself. Sorry. And so you have two wonderful pieces within the show, and they actually pay homage to a lot of well-known authors as well too, that we should know in our community. And so, do you want to pick a piece to kind of give us a talk about while we're in the gallery with Amy?
Yes, I can talk about the story of magic because it actually kicked off. It was the first painting in this series. The series is a larger body of work. I only have 2 in this show, but the body of work would be about 7 to 9 paintings, and it's called Changing the Narrative. So the story of magic really was the staple piece of the beginning of this bigger series. What the series is about is changing the narrative of what we see in Black art, how Black women are represented in art, and how it just in general in museums and what's collected and what's like acknowledged as good art. Usually it's rooted in our past where we are shown as slaves or civil rights movements and things like that. And so I was trying to bring in our history as a foundation that uplifts us to who we are today. So that's why they're sitting on books, because that is our foundation. And I just wanted to use my art as a talking point of how we've evolved to so much more, but still use our history. And the paying homage to Kindred and The Eyes Were Watching God was really my way to show like we've always been creative. You know, it's just we need to shed the light on that aspect of who we are and not just one aspect. We're multifaceted, and so that's really what that piece was about, and that's the theme that's carried throughout this series.
Nice, thank you. And you classify yourself as an oil painter, right? And you do you mostly work in portraits, or does it go outside of that element?
Primarily portrait and figurative work. It's like figurative kind of right here. And I experiment with just bringing like abstract elements and more free flowing techniques as well. But yeah, I would say that I definitely am more portraiture and figurative work until I have to do a mural. And then of course I have to bring in other elements, which is also very fun for me. But on canvas, yes, I'm primarily oil paint.
Sweet. So I'm gonna actually flow that into the next person as well too. Thank you, Stina.
Thank you, Davon.
I'm actually doing good with this. This is awesome. So we're actually going to flow into Ashley Bohanon, who also does a lot with the figure, but in a more three-dimensional way, because you make a lot of fashion and wearable items for people. And you actually also have a unique approach to the messages you're bringing into your artwork. So can you talk a little bit, about your practice and what you do, and we can go over to a specific piece for you as well, and you can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ashley. I'm a fashion designer, and I've been designing for my brand Bohanon & Co. for about almost 5 years now. And I design innovative styles that play up a woman's sexiness and her confidence, ultimately just empowering her to, to feel good about herself when she walks outside of the door. I think about how I want that woman to feel, and I also incorporate fashion history into my garments. I think about just making that piece special at the end of the day, like at the end of the whole process, even if it's like a black blazer, like what can I add to it that would make it unique and special for the wearer. So
Nice. And with your piece, we actually put it up on the screen. Can you remind me of the title of the piece that we're gonna...
Yeah, that one's called the Whip jacket, that khaki one with the kind of like desert print sleeves. So that one was a little bit of challenge, but I wanted to go through with it. After the murder of George Floyd, I was presented with an opportunity to create a Black Lives Matter piece. So it wasn't initially, it was not this piece, but I wanted to create a piece to go with it. And so this whipped piece came about. It started from me just pulling inspiration from African American history, from the emotions that we all felt after witnessing him being murdered. And I wanted to just make people aware of where we come from. I wanted to make something that was fashionable, that could be worn, something that was timeless, but also something that had meaning to it. And then, I mean, this is what came out of it, like a unique piece, something that you won't see, you know, out on the market. So basically, I, you know, took a thrifted trench coat and I cropped it with this kind of like corset hemline, and then I found like this vintage pattern fabric that I had in my stash already, and created like a flute sleeve, and it's unfinished at the bottom to give it a little bit of flair. And then just I took like vinyl, faux leather pieces of fabric and sewed it on to the back. So it has a really nice shape on a body. And so yeah, that's what that piece, how that piece was created.
Thank you. And we still have like a little bit of like over a minute left for you. And I want you to just talk about the difference between you're usually displaying your fashion within fashion shows, and you're attending those and you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
When you bring it into a gallery, does that change up, you know, the meaning behind your pieces? Does it change up the atmosphere that you're bringing with your fashion? What does it do, you know, for you? Or do you think about the audience when they're, you know, walking into a gallery and they see, you know, these clothings and wearable items?
Yeah, I feel like for this piece, the Black Lives Matter pieces, especially, like, I feel legendary. And I say that because during my studies and just, you know, being who I am, I love to visit galleries, and I've been to the Balenciaga exhibition in Paris. I've been to the All Black Fashion Designer exhibition in New York, and I've been to the Dior exhibition in Philly. And it was like, when I go into those exhibits, like, I feel inspired. Those designers, they paved the way, they set trends, and they were innovative in their designing. So for me to be a part of this show, like, I feel like I'm on that level, even though they had like way more experience to me. And I think those pieces are perfect for the show because they do have a meaning to them. They're not, you know, like mass producing out into the market. And that is my ultimate goal, but it was just perfect timing that I, you know, was introduced to this opportunity to have those pieces in the show.
Awesome. Thank you. And with that, we actually get into ChristaFreehands, who is also within the panel discussion right now. And they also have two pieces that are amazing, very vibrant, colorful, just using a bunch of different abstract techniques and stuff. So I want to introduce you guys to Krista. Krista, can you give us like a summarization of who you are and what you have done with your art career as well?
Yeah, hey everybody. Hey Davon. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm not used to doing these Zoom meetings all the time.
I can hear you.
All right, cool. So I'm like more of like a surrealist when it comes to my art. I kind of like to throw random like little pieces of meaning to me in my work, and a lot of vibrant colors. I've always been a really colorful person, so I like to just add a lot of color and a lot of little hidden meanings in my work. I like this show a lot because it's always nice to be in something where it highlights women, especially like women of color, because we don't really get a lot of recognition in how much we pave the way for a lot of people to even be where they're at, and even how much we inspire like a lot of the different, just plenty of different industries, especially when it comes to art. Everybody always wants to, you know, it's always cool to like paint a Black woman or paint an Asian woman. So it's nice that this show is just about, you know, us expressing us, not anybody talking for us. So that's why I appreciate being in it. I guess a piece I would probably like to talk about would be the half empty, half full piece. And
Oop, I think we lost your voice there, Krista.
Is Kristen still on the call?
I think she got dropped from the call.
Oops.
Yeah. So I think I might just give her a minute to come back, I think. But okay.
I think I see Kristen. Krista.
Are you there, Krista?
can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh my God, I don't know what just happened. But the piece that I would probably like to talk about is the half empty, half full piece. And mainly because that piece really highlights how this last like year just was making me feel as a person, just kind of focusing on how it feels like internally to be Black and gay, like how people just view me and how I feel like inside a lot of the times. And I feel like even when it's like it looks pretty out or it looks nice out, I always have to fight with this feeling inside of me of me feeling like I have to make it seem like I'm enjoying the day just because it's pretty out, or address the fact that I'm thinking of all these like issues and problems that somebody like me and like other people like me have to go through. So for me, that piece really just like highlighted what this whole past year has been, just a lot of like tug and pull with positivity and negativity, like sometimes feeling like you're not occupying your body, is somebody else you know, taking hold of it, or sometimes you got this like really good feeling that just wants to overshadow the negative. So for me, that piece probably I felt like was like most important to having the show, just because I think a lot of the times, especially as like a Black woman, we have to pretend, and it's not easy. It's not easy. It's always a battle. And for me, that piece really shows how I view my battle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That was very powerful with the work. That's why I'm glad we got it in here and everything. And so with that, thank you for giving us, you know, some background on that piece. And as I guess when we get back to opening it up for questions, I have some questions for you.
Oh yeah, of course.
In the session as well too. But I'm gonna move on to Amirah Cunningham, which your pieces, Amirah, actually compliment Krista's half empty, half full piece, which you have 4 large works within the gallery, and they are very, very textured, and they use a special paint that you can talk about when I pass you to Mike. But give us like a summarization of your pieces, your experience with the show, all of that.
Well, I am very excited to be a part of the show. I've never been in a show where it was all women before, so that was definitely something new. And because it's called New Beginnings, I thought it would be perfect for this work because I just started the series like towards the end of last year, and I was trying to like kind of close like a chapter in my work in a part of my life where I was like kind of sad and confused about like the past because my work is about slavery and how it's evolved to like mass incarceration. But I kind of wanted to like close the chapter on the sadness and kind of like evolve into like celebrating Blackness a little more and not focusing on like, oh, like we were so sad and all these things happened. So I use this Black series as a way to do that. So I was focusing a lot on not really the present times now, but back and thinking about the journey of the water and like us coming back and forth on the boats and, you know, like those we lost. But I wanted to focus on how much we gained, I guess. So I decided to use these pieces as a way to do that. And they're like about identity and they're about like the struggle, but they're also about like the celebration of Black. And before, you know, like Black is always associated with something so negative. So I wanted to make these big, beautiful objects that were just so dark and so, in a way, bright because they stand out. So, you know, I wanted them to be big, beautiful, powerful, something you can't miss and something to be proud of. Yeah. So that's the best way I can explain those. And I have a lot more in that series. These are the first 4 that I've made, but I have a couple of different ideas of how to move forward with the series. I really enjoy it. I really like it. I think it's a great way to talk about like the connections between slavery, mass incarceration, and everything that we're going through now in our communities and how the past is connecting to the future and just like cycles. Yeah. And it's like concrete because I've written all of my, like all of my thoughts and everything down in this work and it's like there and it can't be changed. This is how I feel, but you know, it's going to evolve and it'll change into something more beautiful where I'll start experimenting with imagery and a bunch of, you know, maybe different colors, different shapes, cool stuff. So that's what I'm thinking so far.
And can you talk about, you know, the specific paint that you're using and the significance behind that as well too? Because that also plays a huge part in your narrative. Because it's not just a regular, you know, acrylic Black paint at all. It does have like a special context and narrative to that. And besides like its original context for your work in general, it adds an extra layer. So can you talk about just the materials a little bit more and the connection with your artwork too?
Yes, so I primarily work in print and drawing. And so this was the first time I've actually worked on canvas and with, you know, like a different material, something that I applied and like pulled tools through and like it was totally different. And I kept thinking about like Black roses and like, you know, trying to get like the darkest Black I could find. I thought I was going to make paint, but then I discovered Black 3.0 and I really, really, really love the way the paint looked. I like the idea of it feeling like a black hole on a wall, you know, like an all white gallery wall. I like how dark it is. I like everything about it. It's very it's like a sensitive paint. It's kind of hard to work with because it scratches off easily, but that was fine. I just kind of went along with it and kept using it. But for this work specifically, I thought it would work perfectly because I was thinking a lot about the Black water. So, you know, obviously water's not really Black, but like the idea of like slaves being thrown over ships for insurance money or how many people that might have been in my family that might be under the water now or thinking about like all the negative things that are kind of weighing us down. And I just kind of like named it Black water. And I was going with these shapes that kind of mimic water or waves and then adding the Black on top of it. I thought it was a powerful statement.
Yeah, Yes, thank you. That is very powerful. And I'll also have some more questions plugged in for you as well too. But with this as well, we can move with another person who talks about the Black body and the space that the Black body occupies within their artwork, which will be Kacey Gill, who's a phenomenal artist who has worked with a variety of different medias. So, Kacey Gill, can you give us a summarization of who you are and talk about a specific piece if you would like as well too?
Sure. So hi, I'm Kacey. I have only been doing art seriously for like 8 months. So I'm still figuring it out. I would say that I'm a mixed media artist. I do a lot of painting, then oil painting, but more recently I've been focused on acrylics, sculpture, woodworking. Woodworking has a special place in my heart. And then like a little bit of photography, whatever. So all of my work is an extension of the academic work that I did in my undergraduate career. So I graduated from Harvard in May with a joint degree in African American Studies and Social Studies. So I spent my entire time trying to understand the Black experience, the Black body in the context of America, but it was like purely intellectual. No one really bothered to examine the Black body, like its physical aspects. It was all abstraction. There was no understanding what being a Black person was in the lived experience. So that's what I wanted to do. That's where all of my work is kind of blossoming from. So I can talk about my chair. So that piece actually was born from, I was thinking a lot about the field slave versus house slave paradigm, but specifically like looking at, like trying to understand the function of the house slave in the like plantation context. Thinking about like what does that Black body in that context do? Like it serves, it's supposed to be used but not heard, not seen in other contexts. So like as I was processing this, like I came to this understanding that like the Black body, the house slave in and of itself is sort of like a fixture in this plantation house. It's a piece of furniture. So stemming from that, how could I, in my own way, kind of like rewrite that way that the Black body just becomes a fixture? How could I create my own piece of furniture, but then also incorporate elements like redefine Blackness? Like how do I make it like pro-Black, so to speak, but also how do I make it functional? How do I then like bring this like abstraction of the house slave into a modern furniture context, make it a piece of furniture that people could interact with and use and actually enjoy, and like have to then like cope with that sort of like cognitive dissonance. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I was doing.
That makes sense. And like, so with that piece and it having that context as well, you do have another three-dimensional piece too, which we haven't really talked about that much. So I would like to hear a description of that and whether it falls along the same lines of the chair piece. But there's a train piece within the gallery space as well too, and it's like immediately in the front, as soon as you come in, it's very hard to miss because it's very much large. So can you talk about that piece a little bit as well, and whether it connects with the chair piece?
So yeah, my train piece. So this one was didn't have the same sort of like same sort of thought process as my other works. This one was more born out of like a desire to explore the way that Black people contributed to the creation of the American railroads, but also how being a railroader was one of the only ways that Black people could enter a middle-class lifestyle. It was like extremely coveted and lucrative, but also came with a lot of downsides. So as I began to think about that and want to explore that, I was like, let me see if I can just make a train. Like, let me have a starting point. Like, how can what is my entry point into this? And for me, that was, okay, I need to like see and interact with this thing that all of these people who I'm trying to understand were seeing and interacting with. So this was made, it's a combination of some plywood that I had and also found materials. So I went to a junkyard and got a bunch of random stuff and constructed it. The license plate is actually a genuine vintage license plate from a train. And yeah, this is like the first step in a longer series that I want to do, but this was the foundation that I needed so that I could build upon it.
All right, thank you. And you ended that right on time. And speaking of, three-dimensional objects and their relationship to the human world, I can move on to Destyni Green, who is a phenomenal artist as well too, who works in also mixed media, which there's ceramic-based plates that she has created for her practice, which we use in the show. There's also a dollhouse that we have within the show as well too, created by her in a crocheted piece and an altar. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Destyni Green to talk about her work a little bit more.
Hi. So with my works, I'm really interested in using both narrative and object to explore identity kind of through the realm of the domestic space and how that space influences and informs your own identity. So one of my big processes in my work is I start off with writing a narrative essay, usually a braided narrative or poem. And I try to use these objects to embody that writing. But yeah, so some of the things I'm very interested in trying to capture here at these works is really looking at cultural expectations and how when those cultural expectations aren't met, it could really trigger some things like trauma or these really big events that might affect a person. So with this house, for example, it was a poem about the ever-changing childhood home I had, from a fire to being renovated, to being lived in by different people in my family. Really just thinking about the people, the language, the culture that was put there, and how it has an effect on me and memory and how I conduct myself as a person. So I'm really looking at, in my artwork, what does it mean to be Afro-Boricua? Being a mixed person, being someone who doesn't quite fit anywhere, and how those cultural expectations I've had have affected me and how I see those affecting others in my community. But yeah, so I'll say that for right now.
Nice, thank you. And can you go into a little bit of why you choose so many different kind of like tactile things to work with? Because the dollhouse, in comparison to ceramic plates, is very much different material compared to found objects that you've also used as well too. Can you just talk about if there is any connection between the different materials you use and why you kind of jump around into different places for that?
Yeah, so part of the reason my work jumps around is because I was doing a lot of seeking this past year, trying to seek out who I am and how I relate to things. And one of the ways I was finding was through the objects owned by my family. So a lot of my artwork only uses materials given to me or found in my family homes. so given to me by my grandmother, my nana, or found in one of their homes. And I really believe that in the altar, for example, objects hold a lot of energy that can be transcended into something else. So for thinking about the altar and an attempt to heal, as it's titled, how can these objects function in that ritual? And how can they transcend into something more? What can they bring back? And one of the things they bring back is a deeper connection to my Boricuaness, which is connecting to my ancestors from Puerto Rico. With the Dow House, I was really thinking about, one, how can I contain this poem? And then two, how can I talk about like these memories and all these things that form as a child? And one of those things I was thinking about was the Dow House. With the Dow House, you're practicing play, you're practicing those cultural expectations. A lot of that play and that practice affects who you are as you grow up. So I was really thinking about that there. And then with the ceramics, again, I jump around a lot trying to find the best way to explore these ideas. With the ceramics, that was again a poem and a braided narrative talking about kind of broken family and what it's like not being to partake in that ritual of eating and the psychological impacts that could have on someone, things that we don't notice, and how ritualistic that is. So I'm trying to explore processes and materials that, one, act as objects to capture energy and memory, or even act in a place of a person, as well as kind of exploring those more ritualistic ideas and practices as well.
Nice. And I can definitely say when I was putting together the altar piece that it definitely gave me an energy. I was actually very nervous doing that, but thank you for, providing instructions and everything. But it was just awesome to connect with that piece so much because like I've seen an altar in a different sense. Like my grandmother has like a space where it's kind of like an altar where she would go and pray and stuff. And it's just an entirely different experience, but especially in connection with your work. But there's something that's like very similar with it. And I felt that same thing when I was putting your piece together. It was just like, wow, this is just amazing and also scary. But thank you for providing that explanation. And we actually move into another person who talks about the energy within the photography that they take and how that displays. This person unfortunately could not be here today for the panel discussion, and I will be speaking on their behalf because they did send me a little snippet of what they would like to say for you guys. So it is Celena Higginbottom. It is not me making up anything, but I will just read the prompt she gave to me. And so Celena has 4 photographs within the show. 2 of them are self-portraits. The other 2 are of a friend. And what Celena says for talking points are that both sets of the work were meant to show a side of the subjects that is both beautiful and unknown. They were framed in a smaller format to force the viewer to get up close and personal with the work, seeing as we cannot be close to each other physically due to the pandemic. It seemed appropriate to create work that requires you to stand close to really see all of the details and expressions of the subjects. I tried to create a sense of intimacy with the framing choices as well. When you stand further back, you see a full picture, but not all of the framing as well. Oh, wait, but not all of the tiny details that really give the subject's personality until you get closer. The self-portraits were really a way for me to step into the light as both the artist and the muse, working within myself to create a portrait that shows me in a way only those very close to me have historically been able to see, which is really great. So when you guys come and see the show, you'll be able to see these portraits and they're very amazing and they do have a certain weight to them when you actually look closer. I actually love the framing that she chose for this. It really hones in to the individual, and you just get to really see who that person is or who they may be, which I like to do with a lot of my work as well. And so that was a snippet from Celena. So thank you, Celena, for giving me this so I can read on your behalf, which moves us on to Younghyeon Ryu, who's also within the show. She has 3 digital illustrations, and she's very amazing. Also uses a lot of surrealism too. So Younghyeon, can you give us a summarization of your work as well?
Hello. I do a lot of self-portrait work, but not in like the whole focusing on my body sort of work. I like to focus on the environment that my body is contained in. So most, if not all, of the characters are me, and they're all Asian American. My experience with art is like I started off doing art because I thought I liked, like anime and stuff like that, but on top of that, I kind of realized I really wanted to express myself and how alienated sometimes I can feel as like Asian, but also American and then Korean, and then having people associate me with Korean, but also be associated with American, and how sometimes like that can be very suffocating, and I don't feel like a lot of times it's understood. So I like to show that in my art and show that I guess there's like more of a story to be told than what people assume. Um, and I actually don't have the biggest strengths in environment artwork, but it turns out that every time I do something where I'm trying to express myself, I do so more with the environment than I do with the person. Because I'm just not able to articulate my expressions so much as I am able to show what the environment has an effect on, I think. Yep.
Nice. And can you talk a little bit about, well, I would specifically point out within is it called the growth piece, where there's a tree, there's a woman within the ground, and there's a bunch of like bodies and body parts kind of like emerging from the ground there. I personally connected with this piece just because like this is how when I've thought about my growth process and who I was as a person, especially like a male growing up within my family, there was like this macho-ness that had to be, within the male aura and stuff, which I did not have growing up. And so I've always felt like I was a late bloomer and that I potentially would never get into that like macho-esque type of dude thing. And I just felt everybody was like they're surpassing me in a certain way that I battled a lot with growing up. So when I look at this piece, it just reminds me of that. And just wanted you to talk about this piece just a little bit as well.
So yeah, when I was working on this piece, I was just like feeling like I wasn't growing at this like the rate I wanted to be growing. I was just about to graduate. I didn't feel like I was about to graduate. I definitely felt very, very strange and in limbo because the way that I decided to take my path was not one that my parents had taken or my brother had taken. And everything just felt very strange and very new. And when I saw my peers who had graduated before me or in general were, starting their art careers in a way that I had wished that I had started mine, I just felt so behind and unable to kind of articulate just how frustrating that felt for me because like I knew deep down there wasn't anything wrong with me and there wasn't anything that I needed to do to change my situation. Like it was just how things were, and didn't mean that I wasn't gonna go where everybody else was gonna go. So I think this was like showing like my insecurity at having not, broken the surface, I guess, like the rest of my peers. But at the same time, it's showing that I am also, growing, and I'm also like there. Like I'm there. There's no denying that I'm there. And at the end of it all, it's like the same place. So like regardless, it's like it's not a race.
Nice, and that's very uplifting, and I feel like that really is shown throughout this work as well too. And we do have a minute left for you, so I want you to talk about your inspirations for your work a little bit, if you have any. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of inspiration from like comic books, I think. I'm like I used to want to just like draw something pretty and I wanted to color something pretty. But then later on I started reading like comic books like I read one called Just So Happens. It was like very cheap at the bookstore and I was like, yeah, this is a comic book and it's cheap. I'll get it at, like it was on the sales section. And I was just like, wow, like the panels are way different than what I had imagined a comic book to be like. But it is like telling a story, like it's trying to tell you like what's going on, and it's doing that through pictures. And I love stories, and I love pictures. So I've always like wanted to tell a story with my artwork rather than just drawing something pretty. Because even though I started off a piece like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna draw something pretty. Eventually, I like the more time I spend on it, the more I'm like, oh, this little bit would be cool to add in to show that this is part of the story, or like, oh, this will be a nice thing for people to find later when they look at it. So yeah, like I think stories are my great inspirations.
Thank you. And with that, we move along with another um, artist that adds a little bit of not controversy, but talks about some cultural stigmas that we're trying to battle out, which will be Euneata Walker, who also has wearable pieces within the show. And she also has a portrait within the show as well too, and a believe want to call it tapestry, but I feel like that's the wrong word. But she also has those pieces in there for the show. So Euneata, I'm gonna hand the mic over to you to talk about your work and practice for a little bit as well.
Thank you, Davon, and thank you for curating this show. Hi guys, my name is Euneata. I consider myself a part-time artist, but I've been creating my entire life. I'm first and foremost a flight attendant, oddly enough, but I've been home over the past year, and it's allowed me to really dive deep back into what I've always loved, which is pretty much everything. I'm kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to art. So throughout my life, I've done a lot of painting and drawing. And most recently, I've gotten real deep into sewing. I don't consider myself a designer, but I do approach each of my garments the same way I do with my paintings and drawings. And that is with a theme in mind, a focus, an idea to start a conversation. And so the piece you see on the screen right here is my piece called Playfully Mine. And I made this last summer. At first, I actually didn't have a theme in mind when I first made this one, but later on, it took its own meaning in that summertime is when I feel most comfortable in my skin as a Black woman. I love what Krista said earlier about like internal struggles, and even though things may look beautiful around you, that isn't necessarily the case inside. I love that she said that. And I feel like I resonated with it because with Playfully Mine, it was me capturing a moment in time with this piece, a moment in the summertime when I truly felt not only comfortable in the environment around me, but also in my skin. So in terms of the technical aspects of this piece, I feel most comfortable when I'm wearing a fitted silhouette. And I really love dresses. It's always a big thing for me, especially in garment making. I mostly do make dresses. I like pleated skirts that have a little bit of flow to them, and I'm all about bright colors. And so the turquoise and the orange, I felt really playful, and hence the name Playfully Mine. The other piece that I do want to talk about is Light on Her Feet, and that did start with a theme in mind. My goal as of recently has been to use dresses to elevate Black women, to really enjoy and see themselves in aesthetics that I feel like haven't been represented for Black women enough in our society. So like lace and tulle and the neckline that I have on this dress. Yes, the neckline, it's I think they call it like a Queen Anne neckline. It's similar to the piece that I'm wearing right now, but I feel like it's associated a lot with like royalty and has a Victorian vibe. But I wanted that to also be something that can be visualized and enjoyed on a Black woman's body. And so that is why I have like a sweetheart neckline kind of thing going on. It, again, another fitted silhouette. And then I call it light on her feet because for a brief time, like I said, I'm a jack of all trades and arts, which kind of goes into my experiences as a dancer. I did ballet for a couple of years, and I feel like there was a lack of representation for Black women in that community as well. And so light on her feet, the tulle skirt, I feel is kind of an ode to my time in ballet. So that's me.
Sweet. And you actually have like a minute left if you want to use this minute. And so I'm just going to throw a specific question out there is you also work with a lot of different materials. Like on the screen right now, we have the Believe piece as well. Can you talk about your thought process on, using different materials that are outside of, sewing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Believe piece was actually something that I did when I was in college. I was in school to be an art therapist. And so some of the classes I took really encouraged using more than one type of medium to kind of get your message across. And so I use so many different colors and so many different textures. First off, I think that's more so my personality, kind of the colors that I'm drawn to. But my theme, like the colors I've always been like I've associated myself with have been like lots of blues, purples, and oranges. And for me, not only do I think those kind of colors look beautiful on Black skin, but I wanted to kind of have those kind of elements really come through in a lot of my pieces to represent Black women in that way.
Sweet. Thank you. And
Thank you.
also move on to another person that uses a lot of different colors to give a variety of meaning to their work as well too. Lauren Webster. Yay. So we're going to talk with Lauren about her work and what she does as well too. So take it over, Lauren.
Well, hi. I just want to say that it's an honor to be in this show with everyone. So many beautiful women, and all of your art has just inspired me and just has made me want to create. So that's been really cool. But yeah, my art has just been very experimental for me this past 2020 and into 2021. So both of my pieces in this show, they're kind of like my babies in the sense of me trying to figure out who I want to be as an artist, what I want to present to other people. And I really like to focus on like double meanings to things. So I'll take something that I'm feeling and I'll put it into my art, but I'll just have like a twist on it. So I guess there's a word for that. I just can't think of it. But like with my Rebirth piece, the bunny, sorry, I'm looking at the screen, seeing her pull it up. So with my Rebirth piece, I have never created something that big. It's 4 feet by 5 feet. And Davon came home one day and he had a huge canvas and he was like, you're creating something. And for the longest time, I've just been creating for other people, doing commissions. So I was like, oh my goodness, I do not know what to create. But I knew I wanted to do something for myself. And I knew that was important. And I wanted my art to like rebirth into something beautiful than just doing things for other people. So I came up with this bunny idea. And I'm a very sensitive person and I take death so hard, whether it's something that you saw coming or something totally out of the blue. And so I went with like a roadkill sort of rabbit. I found a photo and it was very gruesome. but I wanted to show that there's still beauty within death. And so I took its wound and I put pomegranate seeds in it, and pomegranate has a bunch of different meanings to it, just like a rabbit. But the pomegranate itself is what's alive within the rabbit, and it represents rebirth, fertility, abundance, just beauty that is still blooming there. And so I just wanted that double meaning there, like even though there is death that has happened, there's still something beautiful blooming from it, which comes from a quote that I really love by Rune Lazul, and it's, "I'm blooming from the wound where I once bled." I just think that's beautiful. And I also wanted to like have just these bright colors that you wouldn't really associate with death happening within it as well. But yeah, and just the playfulness with how the fur is flowing, like kind of has like a surrealistic like feel to it going on, and just different textures, just to show that there is a playfulness still there within my art, because I just want you guys to see that there can still be a childlikeness and growth within your art, whatever stage that you are at.
Awesome. And with that as well too, you surprise the audience with that boost of color, because when they walk in, they're immediately gravitating, towards this large bunny, where it's like, wow, that's a dead bunny like up there. But then they get closer and it's the pomegranate seeds. There's all these wonderful colors you're using. And you also have another piece that does that as well too. And it uses a similar color scheme as well. So can you talk about your choice of these colors and why, and what it does for the meaning of, because this piece is obviously very different. What does it do for this piece as well? And you got about 1 minute and 21 seconds.
Okay. Well, this piece is about womanhood and discovering yourself within growing into a woman. And I feel like it's something that you're not often prepared for. And so there's 3 different women there, but they're all the same woman. And the woman that is upside down and she's like choking herself and there's hair tangled around her, she represents self-loath, and just like confusion and not knowing where you are. And then the lady, she's like gently touching her face. That's her accepting who she is and growing from that place of hurt. And the lady in the middle is who she absolutely is, her confident self. And like the soft colors just represent like that it's okay to be soft. Like I feel like women have to have this facade about them. They have to be strong in order to be heard. And I just want women to know that there is bravery in being soft. And also with the flowers, there's like a different textured flower on there. And that's just showing, again, the childlikeness, the child that is still within, and trying to grow from who I was as a child and who I am as a woman. And like the in-between, it just feels like so lost, so confusing, but the transition has happened. So it's just like an acceptance of that. And then within it, there's just words that are like flowing all around. And it's pretty much saying that we all are lost in a sense, but there's still like growth within that. So I definitely like go with themes of empathy and love and just nature, and just try and tie them all in, and also have the theme of everybody kind of going through the same thing.
Awesome. And that basically finishes up the panel discussion for each of the artists. Thank you all for sharing your stories with your art, and we can open it up for questions now. It looks like we do have a bunch of questions being asked in the chat. I'll start it off with the first.
I was going to say that one of the questions was really about process, and I think maybe for everybody, just about like, what do you start with? Do you start with a really definitive idea of what you're going to create and then add the details to it, or are you sort of discovering the piece as you are making it? No, it's hard that one person has to jump in, right? Because there's a lot of art.
Yeah, anyone can answer that.
I think for me, I definitely start a piece without thinking much about what I want to say. Then I think I very like quietly think while I'm doing my art. I think like art is therapy for me. It helps me to sort through my thoughts. And sometimes a thought will really stick out or be really bothering me, and sometimes it just goes right into my art. Um, and I think that's a very critical part of doing art for me, because I notice if I don't draw or create something after a while, I have all these jumbled thoughts that want to get out of something, and I need to put them on something, but I can't. And then I'm like, okay, well, I might as well draw since I don't know what to do with these thoughts. And then they just kind of get in there.
Thank you.
I would say for me, it depends. Sometimes I feel like I want to create, like I just feel something in me, like I want to create, and I'll just begin to look for fabrics and whatever catches my eye. I'm like, okay, let's start with that. And so sometimes it would take me like longer to finish a piece because I don't really know what I want it to be. I just know that at the end it has to, make a statement. It has to be fashionable. It has to be wearable. And then other times, if I have the intent to sell a piece, then I'm more intentional with like sketching out ideas and sourcing fabrics, and pretty much have a plan of, what I want to create. So it depends.
Yeah, kind of similar to Ashley, especially with like my garments. Definitely, in my head, I start with a concept, but usually it is like the fabric, or it is like a design that I saw online that really caught my eye. And I like how when I'm working, I don't have a set plan. So however it ends up turning out, I adjust as I go, and it ends up becoming a unique piece that I never really anticipated in the end. So I guess you could say I'm the kind of artist that designs that works as I go.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's the same for me. Like I don't necessarily have an idea, but if I get a little bit of like an inspiration from a feeling, or like maybe I'll watch a movie or a documentary, or I might see something from like another like old artist that I'm like, oh wow, that was like amazing. And then you kind of, it just like trigger something. And then it's also nice to do like some pieces, like if you're just in a mood, but you don't have time to like really put its full potential out there. It's nice to like just sketch it up real quick and then maybe come back to it when you got the time. That's probably like the only time I might plan something out.
For me, I usually I'm attracted to color a lot. And so I'll just see a color. I'm like, I need to make a piece with that color in it. So a lot of the times it just has to do with the color. But for my rebirth piece, I actually sat down and did some concepts for it. And I actually have it here. And it actually ended up totally different than what I actually did. But yeah, I feel like just thinking about the colors or a different like a poem that I'm thinking about really helps in that.
My concepts usually almost always starts with a feeling or a topic or an emotion that I've dealt with or that I need to release. And for the most part, then it becomes like I see a vision of my idea, usually maybe in a dream or when I'm driving or when I least expect it for the most part. And then from that moment forward, I know that that's what I kind of need to start establishing as like the base. And then as I continue to do research or search for references or shoot references, other pieces tend to reveal themselves while I'm working on one. And that's how I typically come up with multiple paintings for one series. It usually starts that way and then kind of just gets a little out of control from that point forward. But for the most part, it starts with a feeling, emotion, then I get a vision, then I do research, and then it kind of expands from there.
I think it's really always so fascinating, just the process of artwork, because not as an artist, I'm not an artist. And when I hear artists talking about creating, they're usually talking, I mean, they call themselves problem solvers, you know, like they're sort of figuring out this problem that they've gotten into this piece. And I think it's interesting just that balance between the subconscious sort of state that you're in, that kind of flow of creating, and then also these choices that get made in the piece and kind of the purposeful and that back and forth that happens. It's just sort of an interesting process to think about and hear artists talk about. So I appreciate y'all sharing your inspirations and you know, how you start that process and you know, sort of how it plays out for you. I don't know if anyone else wanted to comment on that question. I didn't mean to cut anybody off. So if there are other artists that wanted to sort of talk about their process and just their kind of creative inspirations.
Yeah, I wanted to pitch in a little on that. Generally for me, it takes me a while to make work, especially with the series. Like it seems like it all happened at one time when I made them because they're kind of fast paced and I can like make one of these in a week or so. But as far as the concept, like I'm thinking about symbols or like words or phrases or things that kind of like stood out for me and something I read or I watched or really anywhere, like in nature. I get inspired by a lot of different things. So like it'll go over like a span of like months where I'm like thinking about pieces of things to put together or like words and like poems that I put together that kind of inspire work. And then my concepts, you know, generally are under an umbrella of like mass incarceration or police brutality or like how the system has been used to work against like the Black community, like things like that. And so it's easy for me to just go and make after I come up with my systems, put it under like my umbrella of like categories, and then I like make. And I just like make, and then it all starts over again. So it takes a while, and I come up with my ideas, and it just keeps going, kind of like that.
Also, Amirah, I was in the gallery today. Somebody was asking, I didn't know the answer to, whether you are painting the pieces after you do the concrete or whether that is actually mixed in with the concrete.
Those are actually painted after I've laid the concrete down. I tried, I did a lot of experiments before I got to this specific series. And I tried to mix the paint in before, you know, like different ways, different paint, different techniques, but it didn't really work that well. So I started doing layers, and it takes a lot of layers. Like I'll usually put like 4 to 5, I do a base coat, and then I put 4 to 5 like layers of the black 3.0 on it. And if it doesn't look dark enough, like I just keep going until it looks like a black hole on the wall. Like I want it to be like super dark.
Yeah, it looks like it is part of the material. I mean, it definitely doesn't look like it's something applied on top. So I think maybe because it's such a flat paint, but yeah, it's really cool. And when you do the concrete, I mean, did you experiment with doing that on different, you do that on canvas, right?
I do. Originally, I thought I was going to, I don't really know how I got to concrete, to be honest, but I knew it was a material that I wanted to add and something I wanted to subtract. So I wanted to start carving, and I started playing with like clay and like different things, but I decided, you know, like it's really, what's it called? Compound, or like the stuff people use on their walls for drywall compound. So it's super like malleable. It's like, it has a really nice texture. It's really easy to mix. And I just kind of stuck with that. And I did add it on canvas. And originally, like I was making them and I was putting so much of the material, they were really heavy and it just wasn't working out. But I finally found a balance to where they could be light and they could be, you know, these objects that I really admired and like all these things at once. And I kind of call them drawings because I feel like I'm still drawing, and it's like all those things.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's just, and it's interesting that it doesn't like fall off. I mean, I guess because you're putting that layer and really squishing it into the fabric that it is like sticking and adhering there. It's just an interesting process. So I don't know if I've missed some questions. If anyone has a question, please just turn off your mic and jump in. Something that they want to share. I wondered if like you, I mean, it seems like you all have sort of a lot of different backgrounds, that you came to art in different ways. And I just wonder if it was hard, like to, you know, to sort of put yourself out there as an artist, and I know some of you, this is like maybe like even the first gallery exhibit that you've been in. And so I just wondered if you had maybe some advice for other artists, and whether, I mean, I think being an artist is so hard. You are like, no matter who you are, at what time in your life, you really like are showing so much of yourself. You're kind of making yourself very vulnerable. And so I think that takes a lot of bravery. And I just wonder if you guys might want to comment on kind of that process of putting yourself out there as an artist, sharing your work, you know, giving yourself kind of the permission to take yourself seriously as an artist and like give yourself the time that it takes. Like a lot of this work took a lot of research ahead of time, and then obviously like the creation, and just also training yourself in the trade of whatever you are doing, like in you know, learning your craft. So I wonder if you guys have some thoughts on that, and if you had any advice for other artists.
I think, sorry, go for it.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say that doing art is very vulnerable, and same with like writing or even writing music. Like it does feel like you're naked, and just like kind of exposing yourself. Like, and so whenever people critique your art or critique whatever you create, there's something more like piercing about it, rather than like correcting like a paper that you wrote or like an assignment. So being able to put yourself out there, and then also on top of that, like take that critique and not take it so personally that you're not able to do your art anymore, is like a big strength that I think a lot of artists have. And I think that us as artists have to remember that our experiences are not solitary. So when we put ourselves out there, there's always going to be someone else out there who relates or who sees that like themselves in it too, and that we're also helping to uplift or just help them not feel alone. And that really helps to keep like at least me going, because I'm like, you know, I think there's someone out there who wants to hear this story or who needs to see this kind of representation.
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say something similar to that. Like when I always drew and like was sketching in class, and people always knew I was sketching. People always knew I was drawing. But it's different when you put your stuff out there. Like when you actually put something out there that you've taken the time to create. It's not just a doodle. Like you're actually putting it out there for people to look at, to evaluate, to have, you know, inside thoughts on. And at the end of the day, even like it's like what you said. What's your name again? I forget everybody's name.
Younghyeon.
Younghyeon. But it's like what you said. It's somebody out there that's feeling the exact same way. It's so many people in the world, and somebody probably needs to see it or hear it. I don't know how many times somebody has come to me and told me that a piece was exactly how they were feeling, like even gone as far as to cry about it. So it's important. And then it's also important to remember that it's subjective and it's your personal feelings and thoughts expression, and everybody's input, everybody's 2 cents isn't something that should make or break you. It's at the end of the day, it's about you allowing yourself to be vulnerable and accepting all that comes to it and you growing from it. It doesn't always have to be about what another person thinks or has to say about your work. It can just be a simple growing process for you. It doesn't always have to be, you know, oh, it's time for me to be critiqued. It's time for me to be judged. It might just be time for you to like experience some growth. So that's how I like to like get into, like get my feet wet with galleries. That's how I ease my mind about it.
Yeah, Krista, I love what you just said about like even creating art as your own personal growth. That's what I feel like has been my life for the last year, being home for the first time in a long time, and then finding myself going from a really busy schedule to not having much of anything going on anymore like I used to. And so art really took over in such a deep way. And I guess my advice to anyone who wants to become an artist and really put themselves out there is just to start doing it for yourself. You know, I guess it's kind of cliche. It's kind of like learning how to love yourself before you can love other people. I feel like it's similar in the art world. Before you can put yourself out there for others to see and to experience your art, like you have to experience it for yourself. So kind of what I've done in the last year, I created, so for myself, I've created clothing lines. My first one was the adventure collection, and that's what the Playfully Mine was a part of. And that was kind of for me a personal journey, like accepting like, okay, I'm home, I can't go anywhere, but what can I do to still enjoy that lifestyle and be a part of it and be connected to it? And then I have a new collection called Black is Royalty, which is what the Light on Her Feet is a part of. And that's kind of like my process going through what we've experienced so publicly with the Black Lives Matter movement and with police brutality. And so, yeah, my best advice, like just jump into it and start doing it for yourself and feel comfortable in it for yourself before you branch out.
I would agree with the other artists as far as like doing the art for yourself. As a designer, sometimes a few times I made the mistake of being unsure about a design and asking people's opinions and did not get the response that I was looking for. And it kind of stopped me from creating that piece. And so, you know, I had to come to a point where I'm not going to do that anymore, because I get a lot of positive feedback when I do put my designs out there, whether it's at like a pop-up shop or a fashion show. And when I sell my pieces, like women like really love how the clothes make them feel. And so that's I guess in a way that's validation, like to create what I feel and not, you know, show people the process, because they may not see the whole vision. They may not see the bigger picture. So yeah, definitely just go for what you feel. Do it from beginning to completion, and then put it out there to people to purchase or view and critique and stuff.
Does anyone else have any questions? Sometimes it's hard to speak up on the Zoom.
I have a question. if it's not too bad for me to ask one.
No, go ahead.
So all of you guys are excellent artists and everything. And we talked a little bit about kind of like the obstacles about, being one and what you have to overcome and problem solve about. What would you say is the most fulfilling thing, after you created a piece and, put it out there for everyone to kind of view and stuff? Like, what is the most like heartwarming or fulfilling thing you guys think um, is the aftermath of doing all of this?
I'll answer. I feel like as artists, we all have our initial, this is what my piece means. But for me, like, yes, my piece means this, but when people come to me and they have their own like rendition of what it means to them, I think that's so like rewarding and beautiful in itself, because like I start to see their vision for my piece, and it's ever growing, and my piece will like continue to like mean different things to different people. And I think that's beautiful.
I would say for me, when I design a piece, like I like it and I think it's cool, but then I'm over it and I'm ready to do the next thing. And what, makes me feel good is the women who either try my stuff on or purchase it, and just the glow in their face and how they light up and how they feel, and how they describe how they feel in my pieces. Like that really, really makes me excited to keep designing, either do a different version of that piece or make more of that piece, because it's different as a designer. Like I guess maybe because I just do it, I guess I'm on the inside, I'm in it, I'm working the process. So I don't have the same feeling I do like at the end of the process when somebody actually puts it on. So yeah, I would say just getting the feedback from customers is the best feeling.
I think that's one of the things that I hear the most is just when artists don't have a way to get that kind of feedback. It's really difficult. And, just I know a lot of artists, when they leave art school, they sort of no longer have their critiques available to them. They don't have maybe like a community of people to talk about what they're creating and just even get the reactions. And I think that can be really difficult to not have that kind of feedback when you're creating something. You need to figure out some solution for that, some groups, some crit groups or something that we can plug people into so they can get a little more of that on a regular basis. Can I ask a question about just a couple of the pieces that we didn't talk about? Destyni, you had a piece, let's see if I can get it up on the screen, hold on. Where's this piece? Is your microphone okay, Destyni? I know you're having some trouble with it.
I have my mic on. Did you want me to just talk about it a little bit more in depth?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So with this piece, I was really, again, this is all comes out of an essay I wrote. In the essay, I was talking about the power of a name. Me, my mother, and my nana. Well, me and my mother have my nana's name, but it's our middle name. And thinking about how there's generational curse and issues, and also a very strong beauty there. So I was really inspired. This was one out of 3 pieces where I was making crocheted works that incorporated objects and a process of deconstructing the crochet and reassembling it with these objects. and each piece was like representative of myself, my nana, and my mother. So this one's about my nana, and really thinking here about one, like we're thinking a lot about memorializing this person in the decay, and it's kind of falling apart. This piece is kind of like a self-portrait of her, but over time it is going to disintegrate. It's not going to be here that long. So I was trying to use materials that are very reminiscent of her, like the red acrylic nail. She always wears red acrylic nails every day since I was born. I've never seen her wear anything else. She's who taught me how to crochet, and that's a process I use a lot. So that's one of her hooks. And kind of thinking about the flowers as one, like a symbol of that beauty, and also kind of thinking about in the future when flowers can mean something else. Flowers can represent death, and they can represent the loss of a person. So kind of combating some of my anxiety there, and also trying to balance that beauty and power with that sense of like that generational curse or the harm. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking about here.
I love the form of it too. Just the structure of it. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And then your piece, while I have your here, the dollhouse. This piece, people should come in and they should see this show if you haven't seen it already, and linger looking at this, because there are just so many details in this that actually when Brianna was photographing it, she just like kept photographing and getting drawn in because there's so many little details in here. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about any of those, like the choice of like this oven, you know, is, and there's I think one other place that are not white. They don't have this white texture to them. And you have
So
words on
like some of the detailing. Yes, so I could read off. It's based off of a poem. So some of the repetition of words here comes from this one stanza where it's utopia is a place where my mother grew up and where she traced a blue heart surrounding our names inside of her closet. It is still visible beneath white paint. Utopia is the shifting place. It shifts from that place to our place to my grandmother's place and back again. It's a place decorated with cheetah and greenery. Utopia is the place where I forever exist as a child, where I, as a child, grew up to the sound of a music box, and where the food is made with love and heavy salt. So some of the details here, I was thinking about like where the oven is, for example. There's a music box built into there. So it's going back to part of my poem where I'm trying to think about parts of my memory that are kind of intact, but it's really blurry. So I can remember the poem, the music box. I can remember parts of my house where maybe that color is starting to come back through in the memory, or specific objects like the chair or that lighting fixture where the fire in our house started, and there's still a little bit of that mark making there. So I was really trying to capture what it's like trying to think of this place. I don't sketch at all personally. I don't plan out my works. I directly take everything from writing, and I try to capture that writing in a piece. So yeah, I was really thinking about memory and how things kind of aren't ever truly what they were. It's very shifting, just like the house was itself. That's why it's white. Trying to go back to that idea of memory, trying to use the mark making as well as the words to, can't think of the word, the mark making is supposed to kind of point towards that fire, and the words are pointing towards like the things that were built in the home and what was made there, which is like a utopia for me and a lot of memory and a lot of relationships. But yeah, so that's some of the details there.
Cool. Thank you. It's a really interesting piece. There was something, I wanted to ask Younghyeon about these pieces because we only talked about that other one. Just think you really express anxiety that I think is just very sort of current anxiety that a lot of young people have. And I was interested in these pieces and wondered if you could talk a little bit about them.
Okay. The piece on the left is actually something that I'm hoping to incorporate into a story one day. Um, I I think it's about like me moving from Ohio to Michigan in my senior year of high school. I definitely didn't know how to cope with that. I was very um, like I was trying to seem okay just so I can like not worry my parents and like not make a weird impression on the students around me that I didn't know. Um, and I was like very anxious. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't feel like I was being supported. I didn't feel like I was like being heard in the silent anguish that I was in. So I think that one is about that kind of like I was very much like watching a lot of TV shows and coping with my feelings by being online and like on my computer a lot. And then for the piece on the right, this one is about it originally started with me wanting to escape artwork so that way I can like roam the gallery and like just kind of not be part of any set destiny. Um, but as I worked on it more, I realized I didn't know what to put in the paintings. Until I kind of like was thinking like this kind of seems like the color scheme I was ending up with. This kind of seemed like a mouth, and like that the seat looks like a tongue. So I was like, okay, well if that's the case, this is like a digestive system, and like so she's basically escaping a system that would have eventually devoured her. Um, if she had stayed in it. And it's like a precarious jump, but like at the same time there is an escape and stuff like that.
That's great. Thank you. So if anyone else wants to jump in, go ahead. I don't mean to hog the mic here. We are kind of running. We were thinking this would be about an hour and a half. So we are there. We're a little bit over. So if anyone else wants to talk, they should go ahead, but I'm gonna stop sharing now. Well, I just want to thank you all of the artists for the work that you've done. You are great. Keep doing what you're doing. And we just have so enjoyed having your work in the gallery. I hope lots more people come to see it. And, you know, you can email me at info@waterlooarts.org. And I'll arrange a time for you to come in. You will have a private viewing, so it's very safe. I wear a mask the whole time, but really you should get in to see this show while it's up. It's only a little bit longer. It closes on February 6th. And so I guess on that day, we'll also have the open hours of 12 till 2. So you can come in on that Saturday if you'd like to. But and I just also want to thank Lane Cooper because she rocks and she helps me all the time with the gallery and these shows and is just amazing. So thank you, Lane.
I really enjoyed hearing the talk. It was great. And one more time, I was feeling the work is just so good, such a good job on everybody's part. So thanks for sharing and everything.
All right. Well, we'll sign off now, but thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. See you, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank
you.
Oh, wow. So good. So good.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.